What is up, everybody? Welcome into a very special episode of Flippin Bats. Today we have one of the greatest baseball players of all time, the captain of the New York Yankees, number 2, Derek Jeter. I am so excited about this episode and some of the conversations we're about to have about his career and playing against Big Papi and now working together here at Fox and analytics in the game of baseball and being one of the most clutch players in baseball history in October, and how he is able to do that and how he can explain to people having downtime between series. In 1996, the Yankees had 7 days off before the World Series, and now we're seeing buys be a big part of baseball and people questioning whether or not that is a good thing. Derek Jeter is going to talk all about that, and make sure you stick around for the end of this because we talk about the iconic flip, the play against the Oakland A's where he comes running across the infield, flips the ball to home plate to get the runner out. And lastly, have to ask him about the almost unanimous Hall of Fame vote and what he would say to the person if he knew who did it and what he thinks he did to not be a unanimous Hall of Famer. So this one is going to be a really special conversation and one of the greatest to ever do it. So without further ado, let's welcome in the captain, Derek Jeter.
Fly ball onto the track, at the wall, it's gone! Home run!
Turns on a ball, deep right field, and gone!
What a game, what a moment. Here with Derek Jeter. Derek, thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. And I want to start with, you're now a teammate of ours here at Fox, and one guy you are teammates with was a heated rival for so many years, right? Big Papi, the Yankees, the Red Sox, and kind of somewhat complete opposite personalities in many ways. And you're like this odd couple now coexisting on TV together. How has it been working with Papi?
I hated David Ortiz. I really did. No, I didn't know David well because I don't ever want to be the back in the day guy, right? But back in the day, when we were playing against people, it wasn't like I was trying to go out to dinner with everyone. Yeah. We were trying to beat you. So we were always respectful. We'd have interaction on the bases, but I really didn't know him well. But I tell you what, his personality is exactly what you see is exactly who he is. And I've enjoyed getting to know him a little bit better over the last few months.
It feels like that loose personality he used to his advantage. I've heard you talk about before how before games, Papi would go up to the Dominican pitchers on the team and just kind of chop it up with them, try and loosen them up in hopes that they wouldn't pitch him inside and he could get on top of the plate and kind of do damage against him. A, is that true? And B, do you think that actually worked in his favor?
100% true. David Ortiz never got pitched inside, especially by us. He was friendly with all the pitchers. During pregame stretch, he'd be over there in the middle, and it used to irritate me so much, especially considering how much we got hit. We used to get hit all the time, and we never pitched David inside. So I think that's a big reason why he's in the Hall of Fame, because of the friendships he had.
What do you think he's saying to guys when he's walking over? Is he just being friendly, knowing it would work in his favor?
Let me take you to dinner. You know what I mean? Let me help out the family. Send some money to help them out. Whatever it took in order for them not to throw him inside.
One thing about you and Papi both is you're both so clutch. Two of the most clutch players to ever play the game. And one thing I think is kind of taking over the game right now is analytics. But what analytics can't dive into is how clutch somebody is. And you guys were able to do it under the utmost pressure in October. How were you and guys like Papi able to separate yourself from everyone else when things got the hardest in the game?
Man, I grew up in the postseason. I played my first postseason game my rookie year and was basically in the playoffs at all times. You have to have fun. You have to enjoy those moments. I think you have to be prepared. I think that's what helps slow the game down for you. But you have to be put in those situations. And then once you have some level of success, I think you just always look back on those moments. I remember I played high school basketball. I hit a game-winning 3-point shot. So anytime I played basketball after that, I'd always go back to that memory.
Yeah.
And I missed so many shots. It's we don't even need to talk about it. But my mind would go back to the times I had success. And I just think it's enjoying those moments, not shying away from those moments, and not being afraid to fail. Because, baseball is a sport where you're going to fail more than you succeed.
Can you prepare for those moments?
I don't necessarily know if you can prepare for those particular moments, but my biggest fear in life is being unprepared. You hear athletes say game speeds up or it slows down. Yeah. I think it slows down when you're prepared for it. I'm pretty sure if you doing interviews, you're talking to people, you know nothing about them, you're going to be like, oh my God, what do I say next? But if you prepare yourself for it, it's fun. You know what you're going to say, you know what you're going to do. So I just always tried to be as prepared as I possibly could.
So you mentioned that 3-point shot you hit and you go back to that in your mind, right? Is that what you're doing over time in your baseball career? You come up as a young kid and you're in the postseason, you have success. And as your career goes on, you have more and more success in the playoffs. You just use those moments to go back to and remember the successes as you move on in your career.
No question. I was telling this story on air yesterday. Reggie Jackson, one time I saw him right before the playoffs had started. And he said, during his career, when it got close to October, the weather started to change and everyone used to say, Mr. October's coming, Mr. October's coming. So he started to believe it. No matter how he felt, how he was playing at the time, he started to believe that he was Mr. October, and that helped him with his success. So I think you have that belief and it gets you through a lot of situations.
That's incredible. Reggie Jackson's awesome, by the way. I love that guy.
You need to have him. You have him on yet?
I've talked to him a few times. I haven't had him on here, but I need to talk to Reggie about some Reggie, and Reggie will talk about
Reggie will talk about Reggie too. Yeah. Don't worry about that.
What are your thoughts on the usage of analytics in baseball now? I think, from my personal opinion, I think we see it work over the course of 162, right? We see it with the Rays. But when it gets to postseason time, it almost feels like, the game of baseball is different in October, right? The game just changes. And it feels like these teams want to count so much on analytics instead of just going with the feel of a situation or understanding that a player might be locked in or super clutch. What are your thoughts on the usage of analytics in baseball in the postseason right now?
It's too much. It's too much. Mr. Torre used to always say, players have heartbeats. There's no analytical formula for heartbeats. You have to understand what players shine in big moments, when players are nervous. Look, the postseason is completely different.
Yeah.
There's a different set of pressures there. And you can see on a lot of players' faces whether or not they're overwhelmed. You can see confidence. And you can have a game plan going into it, but sometimes things change. If someone is performing well, keep them out there. Even though the game plan says I'm going to take them out with a particular pitch count or so many times through the order, who cares? You got to go with your feel. And I think the sport is losing some of that. But then I think also some of the most successful teams, even in the postseason, sort of a hybrid of the two, especially with the old school managers, whether it's Dusty or Bruce Bochy. I mean, there's a lot of managers there that really know how to use the information, but also have a feel for the game.
Do you have a story about how Joe Torre managing in October, and every analytical number or piece of paper would have said he shouldn't do this, but Joe Torre did it and it ended up working?
Mr. T, he wrote his starters. You know what I mean? He'd go on feel. We'd have guys out there 6, 7, 8 innings sometimes, He'd go out to the mound, he'd look pitchers in their eyes, and he'd ask them how they feel. Be honest with me. Tell me how you feel. And depending on the response, he'd keep them in or he'd take them out. But he'd leave it up to the players a lot of time. He built a lot of trust throughout the years, throughout the course of a season. And, he trusted his players.
Yeah. You're out there as a shortstop, you come in for those meetings. Are there any pitchers that are actually like, nah, I'm not good? Or was he just trying to read their eyes and read how they actually felt inside?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Some guys can say, I'm a little tired. That's all I got. Other guys will try to lie to you even when they're not feeling good. And you appreciate that as well. But, You get to know people when you spend 6 months with them before the playoffs start.
So it's like a little bit of, you talk about the difference between old school managers and new school. And I know Rocco Baldelli is a bit of a younger guy, but we kind of saw a situation recently. Carlos Correa hasn't hit in the 4-hole in a long time for the Twins, but the calendar turns to October. Rocco Baldelli puts him right back in there in the 4-hole. And that kind of feels like one of the situations, right? You're just going off of feel and knowing a guy and his character when the calendar turns to October.
You know, in the player, you know, in the history, you know, players that like big moments. You understand your lineup, all 25, 26 guys, 28, I don't even know what it is now, but you know all of your players. And sometimes you make adjustments from series to series. It's not always, sometimes game to game, forget series to series, it's game to game. And you should know that as a manager because you're around the guys. One
thing that's becoming super pertinent in baseball today is the bye, right? The bye that teams are having. And this is a new thing, but you know, we've seen it a lot in baseball, teams having downtime. In 96, you guys had 7 days off from the ALCS to the World Series. And guess what happened in game 1 of the World Series? You guys lose big time to the Braves. I think it was 12-1 was the final score. What are teams going to have to do, and how do you deal with that downtime? Baseball's 162 over with a few off days mixed in there. You're playing every single day. When the calendar turns to October and you're getting 5 to 7 days off if you're the higher seed, how do you deal with that?
I don't know. That's the best way to put it. You know, I don't know because, you know, you have the buys and look, it's beneficial to have the days off for your pitching staff.
Yeah.
But it hurts you offensively, you know, so it's sort of a double-edged sword. I don't know what you can do. I mean, you have games are televised. But yeah, as a baseball player, especially offensively, you play every day for a reason. I never like to have days off. You know, you go to the All-Star break, sometimes you have 3-4 days off, your timing's off. Now you're having 4 or 5 days off and it's the biggest games of the year. So I really, you know, I don't have an answer for it because I don't really think there's much you can do.
As one of the greatest clutch hitters the game has seen, how would you, Derek, explain to the fan listening at home what the difference is when you're stepping in the box day after day, and then when you're having 7 days off? What is the difference with timing and everything going on?
Yeah, it's timing. You got to get used to velocity. You know, you can have simulated games. I mentioned this the first day we were on air. I said, you can have simulated games. Simulated games are not the same. You know, you're facing your own pitchers. Nobody's going to throw you up and in. You know what pitches are coming because you don't want to get injured before the postseason starts. So it's all timing. You know, it's like especially nowadays with how hard these guys throw. I mean, you have a few days off. It's tough to adjust, and it takes you a little while to adjust.
Yeah. In your career, obviously a lot of postseason games. You faced 22 pitchers in the postseason that went on to be in the Hall of Fame, which is a remarkable number. Of those pitchers, who was the toughest you faced?
Oh man, the toughest pitcher on me was Roy Halladay.
Oh,
yeah. I just couldn't figure him out, man. I mean, the best pitcher I ever faced was Pedro. I mean, Pedro Martinez probably had the best stuff all around. He had the best fastball, best curveball, best slider, best changeup. But I liked facing Pedro. Halladay, I couldn't figure him out.
What was it about Roy? Was it the cutter? Like what made him so tough?
It was a sinker, a two-seamer, a cutter. It's like every time I thought it was going one way, it went the other.
Yeah.
And we faced him a lot because he was in Toronto. So he always seemed to get us every series. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that had problems with Roy Halladay.
Yeah. Career 234 off of him. You hit 333 off of Pedro in the postseason, by the way. So
remind people of that, please.
By the way, I have John Smoltz on the show every single Saturday. Smoltz comes on and he tells a bunch of stories. I need a good John Smoltz story from you, whether it's facing him or what.
You know, Smoltz for us, he was the toughest matchup for us. You know, we faced him in 96. I don't think he pitched till game 4, I believe 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. And then same thing in 99. And we thought, my God, this guy's the toughest match because he threw hard.
Yeah.
You know, and he's pitching that late in the series. We liked our chances. But Smoltz was, for me personally, he was the toughest one to face in that Braves rotation.
Roger Clemens, obviously, teammate of yours, played against him as well. But I've heard you say before, he's the kind of guy that at an all-star game, He ain't going to become friends with the players in that locker room. He would not talk to the hitters on the team. Is that true?
Yeah, very true. He didn't want to interact with the hitters because I think he wanted that intimidation factor. And it worked. Rocket's a big boy. I don't know if you've had him on, but Roger Clemens is a big boy. And I remember I used to get hit all the time. I joked with him when he came over to New York, but he'd hit me all the time. And I remember a friend saying, you should charge the mound. I'm like, man, you know how big Roger Clemens is? So I'm not charging Roger Clemens, but he was not trying to be friendly.
Did you ever charge the mound?
I didn't. No.
Do you regret never charging the mound?
I don't, because in baseball you're at a disadvantage. You have the catcher behind you, pitcher in front of you, and 4 infielders on top of you before you get help. So it wouldn't make sense.
Speaking of all-time greats, it's a guy currently playing that I want to ask you about, Shohei Ohtani. What are your thoughts? As a guy, again, one of the most clutch players in baseball, Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever do it offensively, to see what Shohei is doing offensively and then to see him go out there on the mound. What's it like watching him?
He's a unicorn. It's tough enough to just be a great hitter or offensive player or to be a great pitcher. For him to be able to do both is pretty remarkable. I can't relate to it. I really can't relate to it. You run out of adjectives to describe him. He's fun to watch. Unfortunately he got injured. Hopefully he can come back and continue to do both. But there's a reason why starting pitchers get 4 days off. You ask your brother, you got to rest your body. You got to get ready for the next start. Yeah. Here he is. He throws 1-hit shutouts in the first game and then comes back in 2 home runs in the second game of a doubleheader. Yeah. It's unheard of.
Do you think it's sustainable?
Well, it's an easy question to answer now. You see that he's hurt.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I hope so. From a fan's perspective, I hope so, just to watch it.
Derek, I want to talk about one of the most famous postseason moments defensively that people love to talk about. The flip against the A's. You come charging across the infield, obviously flip the ball home. You can see it here. If you're watching, you can see it in the wall. My question has always been, what were you doing there in that situation?
I was supposed to be there. Like I've told people, that's where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to flip it home, right? But I'm the third cutoff man. So if you see there, I'm the third cutoff man. So if the runners are going to score, I just redirect the throw to get the runner going to third base.
Okay. So the play is never You've never done it. You've never seen it to get it and flip it home.
The alignment, I was supposed to be in the neighborhood for the alignment, but not to throw it home.
So we've seen a couple plays this postseason, I think, of similar sort of situations of infielders having heads up plays here. One of them being Carlos Correa, and one of them being, in my opinion, Austin Riley in that game 2 against the Phillies, where he was over there and cut the ball off and threw Harper out at first. Do you see any similarities with those 2 plays between Correa and Austin Riley and your play?
They're all different, but I think the key is, you always have to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of the situation. In this particular, Austin Riley saw where Bryce was, and he was moving. You got to keep moving. And he's pointing at first. You see him there, and then obviously sort of like the flip, missed 2 of the cutoff men, and then he's right there and redirects the throw. So it's a heads-up play by him.
Derek, I got one question for you before you go. You are a 14-time All-Star, 5-time Silver Slugger, 5-time World Series champion. You are the captain of the New York Yankees. So the one question I have for you is, what do you think you did wrong to not be a unanimous Hall of Famer?
I think I did a lot of things right. I don't care about the thing is people always ask me, let me start with this. The media expects athletes to be accountable. Yeah. Whether you have a good game or you have a bad game, you stand in front of your locker and you answer questions. I think the athletes deserve the same thing.
Yep.
And I never thought or never would sit here and say everyone should have voted for me. No, everyone didn't vote for Hank Aaron or Babe Ruth. I would never say that. But I get tired of answering the question when that question should be answered by the particular person. And that's how I look at it. But once again, make sure everyone understands I'm not saying that everyone should have voted for me, but they should answer. Him or her should answer that question. I shouldn't have to answer.
Do you know, or do you ever think you will know who did it?
I don't know. No idea. And at this point, I don't think I'll find out.
If you could find out and ask that person any question in the world, what would you ask him?
I wouldn't ask him anything. I'd just redirect all the questions I get to him or her. I wouldn't ask him any questions.
Derek, I agree completely. They should have to be accountable as well. The athletes are. They should as well. Derek, this has been a lot of fun, man. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, I just wanted to thank Derek Jeter again for joining me. That was awesome, and I hope everybody enjoyed that conversation. Hearing him talk about facing Pedro Martinez and how tough it was to hit Roy Halladay and why it's so hard to hit after a long down period. The stories of Joe Torre involved, the story of the unanimous Hall of Fame vote and what he would say. I really enjoyed that conversation. Such a special episode here and such a awesome guest to have on Flippin Bats, and pumped to have him now part of the Fox Sports family on the MLB on Fox team. Really, really cool. So I hope you all enjoyed hearing from Derek Jeter. I know I enjoyed talking to him. So thank you all for listening. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. We're also on all social media, including YouTube, where you can watch every single thing we do at Flippin Bats Pod for all of them. But that does it for this special episode featuring the captain for the New York Yankees, Derek Jeter. Until next time, my friends, peace.